I'll give some credit where it's due. Joe Scarborough.
Talk about a bombshell.
MSNBC Morning Joe. They go to Mar-a-Lago last week. That got reported on Monday morning. They announced that they were down there at Mar-a-Lago, and they met with Donald Trump, and they saw him for the first time in 7 years on Friday morning. First off, props to Donald Trump for meeting with Joe Scarborough and Mika, who spent the last several months and years, for that matter, calling him a fascist and a wannabe dictator and Hitler. And Trump, amazingly, decided to put that aside and meet with them in his own home. For all the talk about Donald Trump wanting retribution and retaliation, that's certainly not the person the media has portrayed over the last several weeks. A guy who literally met with two people who called him the worst names possible. Hitler, Nazi, fascist, and said, sure, come to my house. Now, for Trump, do I think it was partially him enjoying getting to rub it in to those two? Getting to say, I'm getting the last laugh? I'm sure that was part of it for him, absolutely. But still, they show up there and they talk about how we went down there, we had a cordial conversation, and then yesterday, Scarborough goes on the air and he came to a very obvious conclusion that normal people came to a long time ago. And that is social media is not real life.
Yesterday I saw for the first time what a massive disconnect there was between social media and the real world. Because we were flooded with phone calls from people all day, literally around the world. Very positive, very supportive, going, I understand what you do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But once in a while I would get a text or a call from someone and go, oh man, I hope you're doing okay. And I call him back and I go, well, Eddie Glaude was one of them. I go, Eddie, are you on Twitter? And he goes, I am. I go, okay, well, I'm not. So we've had a good day. Mika just had a wonderful event, and it's fantastic.
Well, welcome to the real world, Joe, where social media is an important tool, but it's not real life. I mean, I get plenty of information, news, feedback. We respond to you. I mean, live during the show, you can tweet at me, X, whatever we're calling it these days. Facebook, Instagram. I mean, I'm on all of them. You can find me on any of those platforms. And it, yes, can be a good place to find information that's not going to be found in your local newspaper, on broadcast TV, and places like that. So I use it. But you use it knowing what it is. You use it as a tool. You don't use it as, well, oh my gosh, what I see on X is obviously what the whole world thinks. You can't do that. I can give you just an anecdotal example. I mean, tomorrow morning at this time at 7:30, Quentin Lucas will be on the show, the mayor of Kansas City. He's been coming on the show weekly now since early in COVID. And if I look at my X after or during a conversation with Quentin Lucas, it's people say, this guy sucks, I'm never listening again. But on Sunday, I'm in Hy-Vee with my oldest two girls. We were going to make chili that night, and someone on Facebook gave me a great chili recipe. I appreciate all of those of you who did that when I asked for a good chili recipe. So after church, I took the girls over to Hy-Vee real quick. Mom stayed home with the little one. And we're running through the aisles at Hy-Vee right by the house, and we're getting what we need for the day. And a nice listener, she came up to me and she said, hey, enjoy the show. And I actually really enjoy the conversations with Quentin Lucas, even when I vehemently disagree with him. I said, hey, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And then I had to go catch one of my kids from sticking their hand in the lobster tank. So everything was going well. And that's how regular people are when you bump into them, right? But then social media is a totally different animal. It's an outrage machine. And we all get caught up in it once in a while. I admit I do. We're all flawed in that respect. But at least you realize what it is. And realizing what it is important. And realizing that the most viral things you see on social media are not real life. Especially when you talk about the left side of the political aisle. So for so many, they got caught up in saying, if we just call Donald Trump a fascist and a racist and a Nazi, it's going to work. Because when I put that on social media from some of our biggest influencers, oh my goodness, the shares, the likes, the reposts, the comments, oh, people love it. That's not how normal people were looking at this election. That's not how normal people felt during this election cycle. And it was one of the biggest mistakes that was made on the Democratic side of the aisle, believing that their outrage machine was in line with regular folks. And it simply wasn't. So I don't know if Joe Scarborough is coming to that conclusion too little too late. Well, it's definitely too late. I mean, the election's over. But maybe this is kind of an eye-opening moment for him to realize the phone calls that I get from normal people that I know not going to be the same as the reaction on social media. Now, speaking of their meeting with Donald Trump last week at Mar-a-Lago, there's this new report from CNN. Brian Stelter, he's the human chode who works over at CNN. He reported this morning that the meeting with Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, and Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago was a fence-mending meeting. And the point of the meeting, according to his two sources with direct knowledge of the matter, which Brian Stelter's sources are never any good, but I'm sharing this with you for a reason. Scarborough and Brzezinski were credibly concerned that they could face governmental and legal harassment from the incoming Trump administration. He reports here knowing that Trump has threatened retribution against his perceived political opponents and that Trump has promoted lies about Scarborough and Brzezinski in the past, the MSNBC host decided to reach out to the president-elect. Please. Okay, has he promoted lies about them? I don't know what they are at the top of my head because a lot of things are said about a lot of people in the media. But I do know that when it comes to the last few weeks, the lies have only been in one direction. Trump has never responded down the stretch of this election to anything said by Joe Scarborough or Mika Brzezinski, despite the fact that they have called him the worst things imaginable. Nazi, fascist, racist, everything else. Which is the equivalent of calling a black person the N-word. It's a horrible thing to say about somebody, anybody, especially when it's totally untrue. And he never once responded. And now the notion is, well, they met with Trump to protect themselves from retribution. Please, I don't believe that for a second. They met with him in part because they used to be friends with him. And they like the access. They want to be close to the power center. It's just they live down there in Southeast Florida. They do the show from their homes. That's what it's about. Oh, we're just doing it to protect ourselves. What is Trump going to send the DOJ into Joe and Mika's home when they're doing their show and take them off the air? Like, where do they make up this stuff? To me, all this is them trying to hold their left-wing flank of the audience. And this is the problem they've got for themselves. They met with Donald Trump. They reached out to him to meet. But if you are a diehard progressive and you are believing everything they were saying about who Donald Trump is, and I believe they were just highly paid actors. That's what they are. They're highly paid actors who do a show every day for a certain segment of the population. But what they misunderstood is that the people that watch them every day, that are die-in-the-wool, die hard on that side, what they don't realize is that those people bought it hook, line, and sinker. They truly believe it. I don't think Joe and Mika truly believe a lot of the things they say. So they were stunned at some of the pushback. So now they've got to create this narrative to protect their diehard audience to say, we just did this so we could stay on the air. You never know what Trump's going to do. You never know. He just might come after us. So we're doing this to try to keep the peace. It's all a dog and pony show. None of it is believable at all. And certainly if it's coming from Brian Stelter, you take it with the ultimate grain of salt.